What if Rome won the Teutoburg ambush? If 15,000 Romans had lived instead of died, would Germany exist today? In 9 AD, deep in the misty forests of what is now northwestern Germany, Rome faced a defeat so catastrophic that it would haunt the empire for centuries. 3 entire legions vanished, not scattered, not wounded, annihilated. And the man behind it wasn't a barbarian king or a foreign general, it was one of Rome's own. But what if the ambush had failed? What if Arminius had been stopped? What if Rome had crushed the Germanic tribes and marched east unstoppable? This isn't just a question of military strategy. It's a question of identity, language, culture, power. Because if Rome had won the Battle of Teutoburg Forest, the world might look very different today. Let's rewind. Varus, the Roman governor of Germania, led 3 legions into unfamiliar forest terrain, lulled into a false sense of security by a man he thought was an ally, Arminius, a Germanic noble raised in Rome. Arminius had worn the toga. He'd been trained in Roman warfare. And yet, in secret, he plotted a betrayal that would shake the empire. As the Roman column stretched thin through the dense woods, Arminius struck. Traps, ambushes, coordinated strikes from every side. The Romans, built for open field warfare, had no chance. Over 3 brutal days, they were cut down to the last man. The forest swallowed them whole. When news reached Augustus in Rome, he was shattered. He reportedly beat his head against the wall and screamed, "Quinctilius Varus, give me back my legions." It was more than a military disaster, it was the end of Roman expansion into Germania, a hard stop. But what if that moment never happened? Let's flip the script. Arminius is discovered. Maybe a Roman scout intercepts one of his messages. Maybe a local tribe loyal to Rome warns Varus. Whatever the cause, the Romans don't walk into a trap, they prepare one. Arminius and his rebels are the ones caught off guard. The Roman legions, now alert and organized, unleash devastating counterattacks. Arminius is killed. The Germanic resistance collapses. Now Rome isn't retreating. It's advancing. Germania is no longer a hostile wilderness, it's a Roman province. With victory at Teutoburg, Rome establishes permanent control beyond the Rhine. They build forts, cities, and roads. Latin replaces tribal dialects. Roman law replaces tribal councils. Local chieftains are absorbed into the Roman system, given titles, power, and Roman names. In a generation or two, the children of Germania are speaking Latin, wearing togas, and swearing loyalty to the emperor. The region becomes another Gaul, another Hispania, civilized, urbanized, Romanized. And that means the very idea of Germany never forms. There are no independent tribes to merge into a future German nation. The Germanic identity fades before it can coalesce. Instead, Central Europe becomes a land of Roman cities, speaking a Latin-derived language, something closer to French or Spanish than modern German. It also changes the trajectory of power in Europe. Without Germanic resistance, the Roman Empire faces less pressure on its northern border. Resources that would have been spent defending the Rhine can now be redirected, perhaps towards stabilizing the East or reinforcing Britain. The dominoes keep falling. Fast forward a few centuries. In our timeline, after the fall of Rome, the Germanic tribes become the backbone of post-Roman Europe. The Franks, the Lombards, the Saxons, they fill the vacuum Rome left behind. Charlemagne, the so-called father of Europe, was a Frankish king who would eventually be crowned emperor of the Romans. But in this alternate timeline, his ancestors were never Franks. They were Romans. No Germanic tribes means no Charlemagne, no Holy Roman Empire, no medieval Germany. The cultural, political, and religious landscape of Europe changes radically. What about the language? Without Germanic influence, English wouldn't exist in its current form. It evolved from a mix of Anglo-Saxon, a Germanic language, and later French. But without Germanic migration to Britain, the linguistic stew that created English never simmers. Maybe the British Isles are more Celtic, or they're colonized more thoroughly by Latin speakers. Either way, English as we know it? Gone. And religion? Christianity would still spread, but its path could look very different. The Church used the fall of Rome and the rise of barbarian kings to justify its expanding influence. But with a stronger, more united Roman state, possibly one that lasts centuries longer, the Church may remain more centralized, more Roman in nature, and less fragmented. And here's where things get truly wild. Without the fragmented kingdoms of Europe, there's a chance Rome evolves, not into a collapsed empire, but into a superstate, a Roman United States of Europe, centuries ahead of schedule. Instead of dozens of kingdoms vying for power, there's one unified force, a shared currency, shared language, shared military. With Rome continuing to advance in technology, administration, and communication, it's possible this alternate Europe launches into the age of discovery far earlier. Colonization, industrialization, all of it accelerates. And perhaps most chillingly, without Germany as a nation-state, the 20th century looks very different. No unified Germany means no Prussia. No Prussia means no engine for German unification in the 19th century. That means no Kaiser Wilhelm, no militarized German Empire to spark World War I, no Treaty of Versailles, no economic collapse that creates a breeding ground for extremism, no Hitler, no World War II, no Holocaust. Let that sink in. Because 3 legions didn't die in a forest, an entire future was born. Now you could argue something else might have filled the power vacuum. Maybe another empire rises. Maybe a different tribe takes the lead. But the cultural weight and identity of the Germanic peoples were forged in resistance to Rome. Remove that defining moment and you remove the spark that lit centuries of history. So what happens when Rome doesn't fall back, but moves forward? Maybe we never have the same tribal migrations. Maybe the idea of barbarians at the gates never becomes legend. Maybe Rome becomes the default culture of Europe, not a distant ancestor. Imagine a Europe without borders, without national languages, a single bureaucratic system managing cities from Britannia to the Danube. Would it be a utopia or a tyranny? That's the strange beauty of alternate history. It forces us to see how fragile the present really is, how much of our world hangs on the outcome of a single battle. One betrayal, one forest. The Teutoburg Forest wasn't just a defeat. It was a fork in the road. And had Rome taken the other path, everything could have changed. Would it have been better, more peaceful, or just a different kind of empire? We'll never know for sure. But if 15,000 Romans had lived instead of died, the world you live in today might not even have a name.